I stand here before you because you claim to be protecting the safety of women's health issues through passage of these legislative bills. That is a lie, and everyone in this room knows that to be true.
I think it's clear the heartlessness of the abortion argument.
Earlier today, pro-life activists took to the streets of Washington to make their voices heard.
So many of these laws are written by men. They'll never suffer the consequences of their own actions.
The reality is science tells us they're human from the moment of conception.
Every way you've heard of to make it harder for women to access abortion. There's a good chance Republicans did it first.
In this day and age, abortions are an extremely controversial topic. The United States of America is divided over questions such as, who should be able to get abortions? Should abortion be legal?
Should they be covered by federal funding and insurance? How late in a pregnancy should women be allowed to receive one?
What reasons are deemed acceptable for abortions? But before we can tackle these questions, let's take a look at the history of abortions in America.
As shocking as it might be, abortions were actually legal until the mid-late 19th century. They were a relatively common procedure and held about the same risks as childbirth. In 1821, Connecticut passed the first anti-abortion law, which banned the procedure after quickening. Quickening was the term for when the fetus's movements could be felt. Many states followed Connecticut, and around 1880, abortion was criminalized throughout the country.
The original reason for banning abortion was slightly different than the pro-life sentiment felt today. It wasn't that people were blatantly sexist, but rather that Americans were blatantly racist. With growing numbers of immigrants, white Americans were concerned that foreigners would outnumber the culturally American-born children. The logic was that by forcing American women to complete their pregnancies, the population of American children wouldn't dwindle. By 1910, all states in the U.S. had banned abortion.
Despite the nationwide ban, the numbers of women who had abortions did not go down, and it is estimated that 1.2 million women went through illegally performed abortions per year over the 90-year period when they were banned. Due to the illegality of abortions, many women were forced to resort to unsafe back-alley methods of obtaining the procedure. Common methods included inserting sharp objects, such as coat hangers, into the vaginal canal, which would often cause bleeding and permanent internal damage. Other procedures involved consuming or inserting irritating plants and toxic substances, such as bleach or kerosene. Even now, it is estimated that unsafe abortions of this manner result in up to 5 million hospitalizations a year, approximately 47,000 of which end in death.
In 1967, the first Right to Life organization was established in Virginia. Soon afterward, the National Right to Life, NRL, was formed in 1968. There were many rules run by most states preventing abortion, but there was no regulation or standard on a federal level.
By 1973, a new and extremely significant case was brought to the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade. 3 years earlier, Norma McCorvey, going under the pseudonym Jane Roe, was pregnant, single, and challenged the Texas law in order to allow her to have an abortion. Texas legislature stated that a woman could only have an abortion in order to save her life. Roe won her case at the district level. Henry Wade, the current district attorney of Dallas County, immediately appealed to the Supreme Court. Although Roe gave birth to her baby long before the decision was made in 1973, the court ruled in her favor 7-2, saying that the Texas law violated Roe's right to privacy, which was guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. The result was that abortion was legalized in the United States, with the Supreme Court deciding that no state can restrict a woman's access to an abortion during the first trimester.
The decision resulted in massive amounts of backlash, beginning in the form of peaceful protests. On January 22, 1973, the day of Roe v. Wade decision, around 5,000 people gathered around the Minnesota Capitol building in protest. The first March for Life in Washington, D.C. was held in 1974. These protests then escalated. Initially, pro-life protesters would intimidate or shame women who were entering abortion clinics. However, there were many instances where clinics have been bombed or gunmen have attacked patients and workers at abortion clinics. Pro-lifers also started taking their outrage to the law, challenging doctors as shown in the Edlin case, where Dr. Kenneth Edlin was found guilty of manslaughter for performing an abortion. This case resulted in the verdict, abortion is manslaughter if the baby can live outside of the mother. However, and despite the virulent opposition by pro-lifers, the pro-choice movement did not back down. The Hyde Amendment of 1976 banned the use of federal funding for abortions. This rule is still in place today. In the 1979 Bellotti v. Baird case, it was ruled that minors needed parental consent or have to prove to a judge that they should have an abortion.
In 1992, Planned Parenthood challenged a bill proposed by the state of Pennsylvania, putting many restrictions on abortions. This case, known as the Planned Parenthood versus Casey, ruled that states may regulate abortions to protect the health of the woman and the life of the fetus. Among the new regulations were the requirement of informed consent and a 24-hour waiting period before the procedure. The provisions also required a minor to obtain consent from at least one parent, and a married woman to notify her husband of her intent to obtain the procedure. Several abortion clinics and physicians challenged this ruling, stating that they threatened a woman's right to privacy. All but the husband notification requirement were upheld by a federal appeals court. In a 5-4 Supreme Court ruling, Roe v. Wade was once again upheld. However, the Pennsylvania provisions were kept in place.
Abortion in America took a major hit in 1994 when a former Presbyterian minister, Paul Hill, shot and killed a doctor and a bodyguard inside an abortion clinic. It is difficult to see how a man who murders other citizens can be considered pro-life. Also in 1994, it was announced that Norma McCorvey, the woman who had helped to legalize nationwide abortions in 1973, had converted religions and changed her beliefs to pro-life.
In 2003, a bill went through Congress banning partial birth abortion, a method commonly used in the second trimester. In 2007, this act was upheld by the Supreme Court. All this history has set up the present situation of abortions in America. Abortion remains a very controversial topic for many Americans and is still a major political debate today. Over time, statistics have shown that the total number of abortions has decreased by 20% from 2004 to 2013. The rate of abortions per woman has decreased by 21%, and the ratio of abortions to live births has also gone down by 17% during this time period. While abortion may be legal federally, there are many state restrictions preventing women from getting the services they require.
Since 2010, 288 restrictions on abortions have been enacted. This is 27% of all abortion restrictions since Roe v. Wade in 1973. These restrictions include limitations on insurance coverage, the installment of TRAP laws, laws designed to restrict reproductive health care and abortion access by setting extreme and often irrational regulations on abortion clinics, and Texas's 20-week ban, a ban on abortion after 20 weeks gestation, which is the controversial date at which a fetus can feel pain, although medical professionals are very undecided on the topic.
While some women may be able to seek abortion services in other states or out of the country, it can be incredibly costly and a major inconvenience. It should also be noted that a majority of these restrictions are in place in southern states, where residents tend to be considerably less wealthy. Also, under the current government, abortions may be harder to obtain, as the Vice President, Mike Pence, advocates incredibly strongly for the pro-life movement and is often fanatical in his viewpoints.
I want to live to see the day that we put the sanctity of life back at the center of American law, and we send Roe versus Wade to the ash heap of history, where it belongs.
Despite this opposition by the current administration, the American pro-choice movement still has strong traction in the country. Central to their beliefs is that a woman should have the right to choose what she does determining the future of her pregnancy, as it concerns matters of her own private body and personal health. They also advocate for the legality of safe and available abortions, on the ground that it greatly reduces the number of illegal abortions and their associated risks.
As of now, there is no clear-cut solution to this issue. It is a matter of different opinions, and neither group is currently willing to consider the opinions of the other.
The current government has made promises to overturn the Roe v. Wade decision, creating large amounts of protest nationwide. However, given this administration's current productivity,
nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
You're going to get a healthcare vote next week?
100 days? No. Doesn't matter if it's next week. Next week doesn't matter.
there's a relatively low chance of this claim coming to fruition.
What the future could offer is free, comprehensive, and factual education on abortion and sex ed to both adults and children, which could greatly reduce complications arising from a lack of knowledge.
The future is unknown for abortion, and many people will forever have opposing viewpoints on this subject. Hopefully, America will one day be able to come together and create a stable decision.
And it is estimated that 100
1910, all states in the U.S. had banned abortion. It wasn't the.
What reasons are deemed I breathe?
Of pregnancy was put into place, causing position. 3 years earlier, Norma McCorvey, going under the pseudonym Jane Roe, was pregnant. Signal.
Pro-lifers.
In the 1992 Planned Parenthood. Oh my God. "99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. Take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer on the wall.